Hello, welcome back to Mark's House and Garden UK. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that I've just bought 3 of these amazing olive trees. And I bought those from Costco at an incredible price of £400 each, which is £1,200 for 3. Now, I know that's a lot of money, and I know it's beyond a lot of people's budgets, but I'm very fortunate because I have a YouTube channel and it pays me some money. So my approach is every penny I make out of YouTube goes back into the garden. And this is part of my olive grove. 3 of these olive trees. There's going to be a water feature and some citrus plants. So that's the olive grove, and in today's video I'm going to share with you my approach to caring for these 3 large and expensive olive trees. Now, if you want to buy a large tree like this but you're put off by the size of it and how you're going to get it home, you can watch my video how I got them home, and I'll link to it at the end of this video and in the description box below this video. And if you want to know how I planted them, because planting a large tree like that is no mean feat, you can watch my video how I planted them. And again, I will link to that at the end of this one and in the description box below this video. Now, I have had already several questions about these amazing olive trees. And whilst I talk about olive tree care and maintenance in this video, I will be answering those questions. I've got some kit together here, and you'll see what this is all for in a moment. I've got my gardening gloves, got some loppers, I've got my grubbing hoe, I've got my secateurs set, and I've got my hose pipe. Right, let's get to it. Now, these 3 olive trees are 3 of 10 olive trees, and I've been looking after olive trees for the last 10 years. The main thing with olive trees is drainage. You have to emulate the climate that they're used to living in their native lands. The soil is gritty, it's parched, it's rocky, and they have very, very hot days, and then occasionally they get a very wet day and they get drenched. So these plants are used to that kind of environment. So even though we're in the UK and we have quite a lot of wet days, you have to try and emulate those conditions to get the best out of these olives. So that impacted how I planted these olive trees. One of the questions I've been asked several times is, why are they sat in a mound of earth? Well, my approach to this was, rather than bury them into a big hole, I dug a shallow pit and then I mounded the earth up to them. And the reason for that was to help with drainage. If they were sat in a deep pit, any water that falls on the land might run down into that. Whereas by raising the soil level above ground level, it will encourage water to drain away. But the other benefit I've got is the base of the roots is touching earth. So the base of the roots will be encouraged to go down into the soil looking for water. But these are large trees and it will take them a while to be established. So whilst they get established, they have to be watered. And you have to make sure that the water gets down to the roots. Now, if I were to sprinkle water on this mound of earth, the chances are it would run off, which is why I've sunk terracotta pots into the soil in the earth. So that answers a question that several people have asked, and I can demonstrate that now. I'll put the hose pipe onto the tap setting, and all I do, if we've had a very dry day, is come out here and fill these plant pots. And I know by doing that, the water is going down to the base of the roots and not running off where it's just not getting any use whatsoever. Another thing that does is it's kind of a slow release, because that water doesn't drain away immediately. It slowly drips through and I think therefore saturates the soil better. So that is why I've mounded them up, and that is why I've sunk plant pots into the earth around the base. Now, whilst we're looking at the base, I wondered how long it would take for these to start putting roots out and becoming established. And when will I know, and how will I know if they've taken or if they're failing? Well, I've got a couple of signs to tell you about which prove to me that these are now getting established, and I'm delighted about that because I got them in the first half of the year and they've got the rest of the year to really get established before we get into winter, and I'll talk about winter in a moment. Right, getting back to the base of these plants. I've brought you down here because I want to show you something which demonstrates to me that these plants are alive and starting to thrive. Around the base of all these plants, we've got new, fresh growth. That's not where I want it. So I'm going to take one of my snippers. And incidentally, everything you see me using can be bought through my Amazon shop, and there'll be links to these in the description box below this video. If you buy anything, I do earn a commission. It all goes back into the garden, and I appreciate your support, so thank you very much. So I'm just using these now, just to snip off as low down as possible these little bits of olive growth, and I'll do this on all three of them. I've got this on all three of them. I'll also go up the trunk, and I'm just taking it away while it's still fresh and before it's growing too much. Now, one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I don't want the trunk to be covered, because one of the reasons I bought these was because I love that gnarled old trunk. But the other reason, which is more beneficial to the plant than the aesthetic, is the fact that by removing these leaves here, it's not wasting energy down here by creating new growth. That energy will then travel up the trunk. And that's what I want to happen. So that's one of the jobs I will do periodically now to maintain this. The other thing I'm going to do, using my grubbing hoe, is always keep this base clear of weeds. I don't want any competition taking any of the nutrients out of that plant. So any weeds that appear, come out and get discarded. This is a grubbing hoe, by the way, and again, the link to that is in the description box below this video. It's an incredible tool. I use it all the time. It's my right hand. I kind of carry it around the garden with me. But again, there's some of those olive branches just coming out there. Another piece of evidence that these plants have taken is the growth at the top, and I'll show you that next. So I think you can tell when a plant has got good roots down, because it will start to reward you with good plant stock above the ground. And that is exactly what's happening here. When I bought these, I think in March, and we're now in June, the extent of the growth was here. So all that is new growth. And right at the very tips, we have this lovely bright green growth, which is the freshest growth. Of course, that will go dark green as it matures. And whilst I'm up here, what I'm going to do is inspect the tree, and I'm just looking in there for any obvious damage to leaves. If there's anything dead, I will remove it. There isn't in this case. And I'm also looking for parasites, because these can get scale beetles, and I'm also looking for blemishes on leaves as well. And there is nothing. These are in really good condition, and I can actually see in there the original trunk, which indicates to me that these are actually much bigger trees. Now, here's a controversial thing. A couple of people have made comments about these olive trees and have been accused of kind of raping the countryside of foreign countries by encouraging the exportation and supply of these into the UK. So I did ask the question, because I think it's a fair point. And I've established that the reason that these are becoming available in the UK is because the olive groves, which produce olive oil and olives, don't want them anymore. And the reason they don't want them anymore is because it's all going automated. We want cheaper olive oil and we want cheaper olives. So they've discovered a new way of producing it with smaller trees that can be shaken by machine. So I guess you could call it progress. The olive trees like this, which are too chunky and thick to be shaken by machine, are being sold off and replaced with new ones, which can be harvested by a machine. It's less labour intensive, unfortunately, so probably jobs are going to be sacrificed, but that's what they call progress. So that just answers the other question that I've been asked a few times about, do I not feel guilty about buying these and encouraging the trade? Right, let's talk about winter care. Now, start thinking about winter care for your olive trees when you first ever buy them, and then when you plant them. What do I mean by that? Well, try and get your olive trees early on in the year so that you can get them in the ground, or in position if they're not going in the ground, and established in that position throughout the summer. And that way I think that they'll be prepared and ready for the winter ahead. Now, I've got several other olive trees behind the camera in the lee or the shelter of a wall, and they've been there for several years without any protection. But if you're in an exposed site and your olive tree or olive plant is going to be exposed to severe drying or cold winds, it's prudent, in my opinion, because of the cost of these things, to protect it. And I have done a video on olive tree winter protection, which I will link in the description box below this one. So now you've got 3 videos there to peruse at your leisure. But essentially, in a nutshell, what I would do is, if your olive tree is in a very exposed position, cover it in horticultural fleece, tie it in underneath the head or the crown, and then make little snips so that ventilation can come through. So you're basically protecting it from the severe elements of the weather, but also you're letting some ventilation through. But you can see that in detail in my other video linked below. So buy them early in the year, get them in situ early in the year. But then when you do come to position it, think about the position. Now, I wanted mine here. So I've kind of broken my own rules in a way, because here we are exposed to the prevailing wind that comes from over there. The upside to that is this is all south and west facing, so they will get the light that they need and the heat that they need through the summer. But come the winter time, this is probably one of the coldest areas of my garden. The wind and the weather comes in from over there. Now, the 2 olive trees down there are in the shelter of a hedge, but this one here to my immediate left is slightly exposed, so I'll be keeping a very close eye on that and probably wrapping that one in a large fleece. Aesthetically, it won't look great, but it will protect those tender leaves. Having said that, if you don't wrap your olive tree and it suffers from some winter damage, providing the root isn't dead, it will come back if you give it a hard pruning in the spring. I've done loads of videos on how hard you can prune an olive, and in my experience you can prune them basically all the way back to nothing and they will grow back. That's what's happened to these. If you look underneath all that lovely fresh growth on these large olives, you can see thick trunks which have basically just been chopped off with a chainsaw. The root ball has been plonked in a large plastic container and they've grown back, and that's what they do. And you can see that that's what they do because they're growing back from the trunks at the base. So again, don't be too precious about your olive tree. Obviously, take due care, but don't lie in bed at night worrying about it. I'll protect that one. Probably won't protect the others. Keep an eye on them and we'll see what spring brings. Now, I showed you before that I brought my loppers out. Why loppers? Why not secateurs? Well, another thing I intend doing is judiciously going into the centre and pruning out some of the larger branches. And I'll explain the reason why I intend doing that. You want air and ventilation and light to get into there. That is actually fake, it's false. That would not be like that in its wild conditions. These would be much longer branches with olive branches on the end of them, wouldn't they? But you can see they've been sawn back to a stump. And so this density of branches, in my opinion, is fake and false. So I've got no compunction about just going in there and occasionally thinning out the branches. Good clean tools, obviously good hygiene. Diagonal cuts so that the water runs off. And just let some light and some air in there. And in a way, it's like the fourth bridge. You're fighting a losing battle because it's going to grow back anyway. I will probably leave, ultimately, a couple of the thicker ones to venture out. And I might go for bigger trees. But for now, I'll just maintain this slight lollipop shape. Next summer, I might decide to be a bit adventurous and just let the bigger branches grow out and prune everything off so that I've got much more of an open crown tree. But that's for next year. So there we go, bit of a roundup on olive tree care and olive tree maintenance. Now, before I go, some exciting news about my arid desert gravel border. The gravel is arriving tomorrow, so if you want to see that being installed, tune in next time, subscribe and hit the notifications bell. I'm going to try a bit of an experiment with these cut-offs. I want to see if I can get them to take as cuttings. So these are the ones from the base of the tree, and I'm basically just going to remove a lot of the green matter from below, and then I'm going to snip it just below a leaf node, and then I'm going to scar, basically peel off with a very sharp knife half of the bark. The theory is that scar tissue there will grow roots, and then I'm just going to gently push that down the side of a plastic pot like that. There's space for more than one in there. This is the branch you've just seen me lop off. Let's see if we can do it with a slightly bigger branch and end up with a bigger tree. So, snip, remove, scar, probably remove a bit more of the foliage so that it's not under too much stress. And insert. Will it take? Well, if you want to find out, subscribe and hit the notifications bell. That's very gritty soil, by the way. And I will put an update to this as soon as I have one as a link above this video, just here, and also at the end of this video. Hope you found that useful. I'll see you soon for some more olive tree adventures. Bye for now.